The theta brainwaves frequencies appear to have something to do with memory in the human brain, along with other potential functionality that they have. And it appears that they are mainly active within the hippocampus of the brain, of the human brain. And there was a study, among other studies, that was done a couple of years ago by the University of Arizona that had in particular to do with theta brainwaves and memories in humans. And we're going to talk about that in this. Theta brainwaves frequencies are the one that are a little bit lower in frequency than alpha, between 3 to 12 hertz, and we exhibit them mainly when we are asleep, but also when we are awake. So, for example, if you've zoned out from time to time, you're most likely decrease the brain waves down to the theta waves. And its functionality is being studied as we speak, and we're learning more and more about the brain frequencies of the humans. In this case, in particular, when it comes to theta, it appears that it definitely has something to do with the memory within the human brain. While we are awake, the theta waves frequencies appear to be mainly present in the hippocampus of the human brain. However, when it comes to mice, for example, they are much more visible in larger parts of the brain, obviously, because they're also smaller animals. And what's surprising is that these waves also appear in completely still human challenge with memorizing, for example, list of words or picture. And there are some other studies that have found that these oscillations are very critical in associating different concepts. Also, theta waves appear to have to do with when we are forming memories as well as storing memories. And there's a direct link between the human memory and the theta waves that is also being studied in other universities. In this particular studies, the scientists create a virtual environment of a mall and had these participants virtually walk around the mall, and they asked them to memorize the different locations of the different specific number of shops within the mall. And after 2 rounds, they asked them to remember and tell about the specific details of these shops, virtual shops from the mall. And this memory task was very profound in that it also, at the same time that these participants were forming memories as well as retracting the memories, they were calculating and measuring and observing the brainwaves frequencies. Once these scientists got the results, the brainwaves analysis came back with a clear answer. Both navigation and mental simulation sparked theta waves within these human participants. And it became stronger as these trials progressed. However, simply remembering the route within the shopping mall without any movement generated far larger waves that lasted longer within the human brain of these participants. And they found the same results regardless of whether analyzing it in each individual electrode or each volunteer. So it seemed that the memory is a far stronger driver of theta waves in comparison to simple navigation, said the research scientist. Theta waves seem to naturally occur in the brain even without outside stimulation, supporting the idea that they are internally generated in the brain and are crucial for these results, with memory being closely intertwined to theta waves. it's possible to tap into the unique frequencies and improve memory during, for example, aging or with patient with dementia, etc. And researchers are now already exploring different brain stimulation methods in terms of electrical or magnetic stimuli in order to improve memories within these patients. But perhaps more broadly, the study adds to a recent trend that explores brainwaves as a novel route for treating difficult neurological disorders such as Alzheimer's or stroke. Dozens of other clinical trials are now also turning into methodologies to see whether they can help different patients with brainwaves frequency stimulations to see whether they can improve their conditions as well as their. To note that as scientists, we're not able to observe and truly see what is going on within the brainwaves of human participants at a scalp level, because when we use neuroheadset devices, we put the neuroheadset on the scalp of the brain, and essentially what we are measuring is the weak electrical activities that these sensors can extract from the scalp of their brain on the surface. And for that reason, when the scientists who are doing these studies on, for example, LFPs, local field potentials, they go much deeper with these EEG sensors and they implant these sensors within the specific regions of the brain, let's say hippocampus, to measure those. And so it's very important to keep reminding ourselves when we read these type of studies along with others that where do the brainwaves frequencies that they're studying coming from. Having said that, because we are getting increased a number of studies, we can combat the questionable way in which we are able to gather brainwaves frequencies to studies with the sheer number of studies that we do. In other words, we can combat the fact that maybe the methods is not perfect, but if we continue doing scientific research, let's say instead of doing one study, we have now hundreds of studies. And if we keep showing the same results, then we can increase the validity and the reliability of the results of these scientific studies. A recent article came up on my feed where somebody was essentially questioning the way in which we read EEG and how much we can infer at a scientific level what they mean. And that is the reason I'm bringing this up. And I didn't go into adding comments to the post because I feel like sometimes people just take it the wrong way, or it just creates too much friction that you basically don't need, because when you know, and it really doesn't help to start arguing with people who maybe don't have the background, the scientific background. But it's important to remember that if you see posts as such, to really go back to the core of who is it that is posting, what is their intention with posting these. Are they truly after having a scientific discussion, or is it more like, hey, let's just get some clicks on here? But more importantly, how much truth is it into it? And the truth of the matter is that when it comes to studying the brainwaves, especially the humans, we are not allowed to implant these sensors into healthy individuals. And so as a result, the most at which we can do on the human level is to read their EEG from the scalp. And obviously, it's not as accurate as when you implant the sensors like you do with small animals like mice and other animals, where you are reading at a local parts of the brain. Let's say in hippocampus, you have implanted these, sensors. Obviously, nonetheless, even if there's a huge difference between reading and observing and doing studies with EEG at the scalp level in comparison to LFP, we always in our scientific studies have a section where we discuss the limitation of a study, because any type of research you do in any field, not only neuroscience, there's always a limitation, and scientists are always, it's part of our ethical way to write papers and publish them, is to include a section where we discuss the limitation, because it just goes to show that we have been thinking about this study from all angles, and here is the limitation. Sometimes the limitation is the methodology. In this case, EEG at the scalp level versus LFP at the more sort of a local level of reading their brainwaves frequencies. Or it could be that maybe the research paper is sponsored by a company that is conflict of interest, or maybe the number of participants were too few. So we always have a section there where we discuss the limitations. And so anybody who is seasoned and familiar with reading research papers, they know that there is always a section where the limitations are discussed. And so to me, coming and writing an article as such, it's kind of a premature and a little bit like dramatic way of trying to, I guess, clickbait. I don't know what it is called, because it just goes to show that the person in question, maybe, I don't know that person, but maybe they haven't really thought through what scientific work is and how rigorous these all are, and how much we are aware of the limitation of every single study that we do. Even if we don't make ourselves aware of it, our peers do when they do peer-reviewed, or more importantly, the rest of the world will, because we're always under scrutiny, in my honest opinion. I'm even willing to bet that if we were to look at the source of people who write these type of articles, they probably have never really published anything. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just that those who tend to be so harsh in terms of judging specific things, in my opinion, at least based on my experience, they really have never been there. And it's just like, it's a very premature way of looking at things and discussing things, because the way in which we discuss even and criticize maybe something, it just always shows how much thoughts we have put into it. And most of the time when I see people who are having a really healthy discussion about something, they've most likely looked at a topic of interest from all angles and not only from one specific angle. And in my opinion, those articles are pretty dangerous, mainly because it influences the broader audience who may or may not have the right background, and it sort of stir up something that should have really never been a topic of discussion, at least in that manner. But that's my 2 cents at least. Anyway, so that's all I have for today. Thanks for all your likes and comments, and feel free to share, and I'll see you guys next time.